23-26 The silver lampstands were undoubtedly used in courtyards or rooms other than the Holy and the Most Holy, for the furnishings of these two rooms were of gold. As in the tabernacle, the lamps of the golden lampstands were lighted up evening by evening, constantly. 2ch 13. 11. When the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 607 BCE, the lampstands were among the gold and silver items taken from the house of Jehovah. J 52. 19. Jewish portrayals of the temple lampstand on a column pillar at the right. On a synagogue floor above have a base design very different from what is shown on the Arch of Titus. Lampstand 198 Temple rebuilt by Zerubbabel. The scriptures provide no information about lampstands in the temple rebuilt by Zerubbabel. However, Josephus says that Antiochus Epiphanes stripped the temple, carrying off the golden lampstands. Jewish Antiquities, 12, 250 v. For the apocryphal book of Maccabees mentions a lampstand being removed, necessitating the making of a new one. 1 Maccabees 1. 21-23. 4. 49, 50, JB. Temple rebuilt by Herod. The magnificence of the temple rebuilt by Herod would give basis for assuming that this temple must also have contained lampstands equal in beauty and costliness to those in Solomon's temple. We have no mention of them in the scriptures, however. Evidence of such a lampstand is found in its mention by Josephus and its representation on a bas-relief in an interior vault of the Triumphal Arch of Titus in Rome. On this arch are depicted certain items taken from Jerusalem when it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. Josephus claimed to have been an eyewitness of this triumphal procession of Emperor Vespasian and his son Titus. Josephus speaks of the procession carrying a lampstand, likewise made of gold, but constructed on a different pattern from those which we use in ordinary life. Affixed to a pedestal was a central shaft, from which there extended slender branches, arranged trident fashion, a wrought lamp being attached to the extremity of each branch. Of these there were 7. The Jewish War, 7, 148, 149 v. 5. No one can say for certain today whether the lampstand depicted on the Arch of Titus looks exactly the same as the original from the temple in Jerusalem. Differences in opinion concern mainly the form of the base, made up of two parallel polygonal cases, the smaller one above the larger. One viewpoint is that the Roman representation on the arch is accurate, but that Herod himself had changed its design from the traditional Jewish form of a triangular, or tripod, base in a westernizing campaign to please the Romans. Other scholars disagree that the representation is exact. Decorative panels on the base display eagles and sea monsters, which they cite as an apparent violation of the second commandment. Some conclude that the original temple lampstand stood on 3 legs, basing this in part on the numerous representations of the lampstand from different parts of Europe and the Middle East dating from the 3rd to the 6th centuries that show a tripod base, a few with animal feet. The oldest representation of the lampstand appears on coins of Antigonus II, who reigned 40-37 BCE, though not well preserved. One specimen seems to indicate that the base consisted of a plate with feet. In 1969, a representation of the temple lampstand was found incised in plaster in a house excavated in the old city of Jerusalem. The schematic drawing indicates 7 branches and a triangular base, all ornamented with knobs separated by 2 parallel lines. In the tomb of Jason, discovered in Jerusalem in 1956 and dated to the beginning of the 1st century BCE, archaeologists found designs of a 7-branched lampstand scratched into a plaster. The lower sections seem to be stuck into a box or stand. Thus, on the basis of these archaeological findings, some object to the appearance of the base of the lampstand on the Arch of Titus and suggest among other possibilities that the carvings are a Roman artist's conception influenced by Jewish designs familiar to him from other sources. Figurative use. The prophet Zechariah saw in vision an unusual golden lampstand. As with the lampstand prepared for the tabernacle, it had 7 lamps, but these lamps had 7 pipes, which scholars understand in a distributive sense to mean a pipe to each lamp. Also, on top of the lampstand there was a bowl. Apparently a continuous supply of oil was provided for the lamps through the pipes leading to them. The oil evidently came textoi acute miritra longo. Landowner 199. 2 witnesses who were to prophesy in sackcloth were said to be symbolized by the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands. Re 11. 3, 4. Lance. See arms, armor. Landowner. From very early times, property rights of landowners or landholders have be a middle lim, literally, owners have been recognized. Abraham bargained with Ephron the Hittite for a burial place for his wife Sarah, finally buying a field for a stated sum, the transaction being legalized before the townspeople. GE 23. 1-20 During a famine in Egypt, Joseph bought land for Pharaoh from Egyptian landowners, in exchange for food. GE 47. 20-26 God's faithful servant Job, living in the land of Uz, possessed inheritable property, doubtless including land, that he gave to his sons and daughters. Job 1. 4. 42. 15 However, Jehovah is the supreme landowner, and his dealings demonstrate that humans are accountable to him for the way they use his property. PS 24. 1. 50. 10-12. In Israel. When Jehovah brought Israel into Canaan, he exercised his right as Lord and owner of the whole earth to dispossess the Canaanites, who were, in effect, squatters on the land. Jos 3. 11. 1 Co 10. 26 The period of God's tolerating their holding the land had run out. Although more than 450 years previously God had promised the land to Abraham's seed, he had told Abraham. The era of the Amorites, a term sometimes used for all the Canaanite tribes, has not yet come to completion. GE 15. 7, 8, 12-16 Therefore, as the Christian martyr Stephen told the Jews, God did not give Abraham any inheritable possession in it, no, not a footbreadth. But he promised to give it to him as a possession, and after him to his seed, while as yet he has no child. Acts 7. 5. Israel was not to fight wars of aggression, continuing to expand its territory by taking the property of surrounding nations. Jehovah warned Israel that they must respect the property rights of certain nations to whom he had assigned land. These nations were Edom, Moab, and Ammon, related to the Israelites through Esau, Edom, and Lot, Moab, and Ammon. 2. 4, 5, 9, 19. Promised land held in trust. Even the people Israel, to whom God had given the land for them to enjoy as landowners, were told by Jehovah that they were not actually owners of it but only held it in trust. He said concerning the sale of a family land estate. So the land should not be sold in perpetuity, because the land is mine. For you are alien residents and settlers from my standpoint. 25. 23 God had ousted the Canaanites from the land for their disgusting practices. He warned he would also take away all title from Israel and drive them out of the land if they followed such practices, and when they later did, they were sent into exile. 18. 24-30. 25. 18, 19. 26. 27-33. 52. 27 After 70 years of desolation of their land, from 607 to 537 BCE God mercifully re-established them, but this time under Gentile domination. Eventually, in 70 CE the Romans completely destroyed Jerusalem and scattered its people. Within the nation, tribes were assigned sections of the land or cities inside the boundaries of other tribes. Priests and Levites had cities with pasture grounds. Jos 15-21 In turn, within the tribes families were allotted inheritances. These divisions became smaller as families subdivided their own allotments, because of increase in numbers. This resulted in thorough cultivation and use of the land. Inheritances were not allowed to circulate from one tribe to another. To prevent this, women who inherited land, because there were no living brothers, had to marry within the tribe to hold their inheritance. New 36. 1-12. If a man died without having a son, his brother or, if no brothers, his nearest of kin could marry his widow to bring forth offspring from her. The man marrying the widow could also repurchase the dead man's inheritance, if it had been sold. Rue 4. 9, 10, 13-17 A woman's otex to a acute miritra longo, landowner 200 in Israel. This was illustrated in the refusal of Naboth to sell a field of his inheritance to King Ahab. 1 Kai 21. 1-4, 17-19. Compares 46. 18. The Levites. As a protection to the Levites, their fields could not be sold. It was because Levites had no individual land inheritance. They had been given only houses in the Levite cities and the pasture grounds surrounding them. If a Levite sold his house in a Levite city, the right of repurchase continued for him, and in the Jubilee, at the latest, it was returned to him. Law 25. 32-34. As the productive land yielded fruitage, the great proprietor of all the land was not to be left out of the picture. By means of the tithing arrangement, a tenth of the produce was to be used to support the Levites in their important functions related to Jehovah's worship, thus spiritually benefiting all Israel. New 18. 21-24. The 14. 22-29. The sanctuary. The sanctuary of Jehovah could also become a landholder by reason of fields sanctified to Jehovah. That is, the produce of these fields went to the sanctuary for a period of time designated by the owner or possessor. Law 27. 16-19. If a field that was sanctified by the owner was not repurchased, but was sold to another man, that field would become the permanent possession of the sanctuary at the time of the Jubilee. Law 27. 20-21. Also, fields devoted to the sanctuary by their owners remained the permanent possession of the sanctuary. Law 27. 28. In the Christian congregation. The Bible makes it clear that individual property rights were recognized in the Christian congregation. When the congregation was established, on Pentecost Day, 33 CE, many Jews and proselytes of the Jewish religion from other lands had gathered at Jerusalem to observe the festival. A large number of these were present to hear Peter's discourse and began to be believers in Christ. Act 2.